Welcome to Innovation and Leadership. My name is Jess Larsen. I'm super excited on this episode to have CEO of Booking Holdings. A lot of Americans know Priceline.com, OpenTable, Kayak, these brands under Booking Holdings. We just checked market cap, $123 billion as we're talking here today. Glenn, I'm really excited to hear about your story and really the Booking story. I don't know if all of my friends and my different entrepreneurs I spend time with understand like this rise from, a reverse merger $6 share up to over $3,500 share that you've got today. Where do you want to start? Where do you want to start on the Booking.com's Booking Holdings story?
Yeah, no, I guess probably the beginning would be a good place to start. And thanks for having me, Jess. And it really, it's things like this that you look back and say, wow, how did this happen? But, it wasn't overnight. It took a long time. I joined this company, hard to believe, almost 24 years ago. Pretty amazing, actually. 25, actually, because I started in 2000, February 2000. So it's been a long time. But we'll see what happens, over the next 24, 25 years, see how it goes. But for right now, we're pretty darn pleased.
Yeah, no kidding. So I would love for you to talk about the idea of growing a $100 billion plus company and you getting to see these different iterations and then eventually being the big cheese and having the top job. I would love to know what kind of observations you have that maybe the business press doesn't normally cover or things like that.
Yeah, again, it's the stories of quote unquote winners or people who do well. It always looks like a straight line and everything, started fine and they had a vision and they achieved it, they executed it. Truth of the matter is we had a lot of reversals. I'll tell you, the travel business, it's fun. It's something that I love. I think we're doing something good, helping the world. Travel is a good for the world. But I'll tell you, it's not easy. And you have to deal with a lot of things that you have no control over. When I start beginning in February 2000, we're at the internet peak and everybody thinks the internet's going to go to the moon and everything's going to be great. When I joined in February, the value of the company was approximately $15 billion, which was down half from the IPO when it started out at $30 billion. Still enormous numbers. And for the end of the year, we're below $1 billion. So it's, now it's like, because you had the whole .com had gotten to the dot implosion. And, we're saying, what are we going to do? And we do things right. We cut back, we focus, and we're doing well. And then you get 9/11. And if you remember 9/11, you're old enough to remember 9/11, a long time ago now, travel stopped in the U.S. completely. Every single plane was grounded. Nobody was getting on planes. Now what are we going to do? So you got to fight your way out of that. So we fight our way out of that, and we come back and all that. Now things are going okay. Then there's the great financial crisis, 2008, 2009, 2007 started. Things look like they're going to be terrible again, but we come out of that. And then there are other events all throughout. You have tsunami that shuts down European air travel. I was in Europe, couldn't get home. Or you have a terrible thing like tsunami in Japan, or there's a tsunami in India, the Indian Ocean, that caused a whole bunch of travel disruptions. And then you find something really serious, and that's the pandemic. And that really was devastating to the business. So it wasn't a straight line ever. It always been things are going well and then something happens. When things are going well, then something happens. And the thing that you learn is when things are going well, you recognize that, okay, this probably isn't going to last forever. We're going to have to prepare for the bad things that are going to happen. And then when the bad things happen, you say, okay, we've been through this before. We'll get through it again. Everybody stay calm. Do what we have to do. Run the playbook. And we'll come out of this okay. And that's how we've been able to achieve what we've achieved.
Yeah. So and when did you take over as CEO?
January 1, 2017. It's funny. It seems on the one hand like yesterday, and then other times you're like, boy, it's been a while. And again, because going through, obviously, pandemic, that was really hard. But also, we are the number one player in Russia. Russia invades Ukraine. Ukraine were pretty good too. Eastern Europe were very good in. All of a sudden that business, disappears. We pull out of Russia. We have to then deal with all those issues. And then come out of that, now, of course, we have the Middle East in flames. These things, one thing after another, and 7 years, but boy, it sometimes seems a lot longer.
Yeah, yeah. So from that, post.com, $1 billion low on market cap. What was it by 2017 when you took over?
When I took over, probably around, I to look back, probably about 55, maybe 60, maybe somewhere around there. It's again one of those things that people are always, saying, can I achieve the same type of growth that people before me? Hard to do when you're already that size.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you've been there. You've seen how things have happened. You've seen this meteoric growth again from that dip down to the $1 billion valuation. It's up 55x. And in your mind, this idea of like, oh, I wonder if I could add another 55, 60, 70x, right? This like doubling from 55 plus.
I think we have to do some more of the travel, I think, because you look at the total size of travel and you're saying, wait, I'm not sure we'd have to have all traveling. It's one of those things we have to think of doing something else. Like, I just want to continue to do what we have been doing, which is just make better products, better services. Do better products, do better services. The volume will come, the business will come because you're doing something that is better for the consumer or better for our partner. Just focus on that. Don't focus so much on the numbers in terms of how fast have we grown. Yeah, it's important for investors or that, but that will be a result of a better product, a better service. That's the thing you really have to concentrate on.
Well, I want to talk about this. I've been listening to so many of your interviews, and people can't help but ask you all these short-term questions and short-term travel predictions, short-term this. And when I listen to you talk, I'm hearing all these Warren Buffett answers about what about the long-term trends? What about the long-term possibilities?
Yeah.
I guess the question I have is for people who are thinking they want to do something on a global scale, they're delusional enough to think that they want to try and build a $123 billion company over a few decades. What are some common elements that you think people need to kind of pressure check their ideas of like, is this a big enough market? What kind of an edge do we have? But what would be to you the kind of things that if somebody's really thinking about this type of eventual scale that they need to be considering?
Well, I think the first thing to think about is that, again, and it's a little bit what we just talked about, is I think the person may have things a little backwards. Instead of thinking I want to build a $100 billion company, is you think I want to make a great service for somebody. I want to make a great product for somebody. And that's really the important thing. And it's really kind of, I imagine there are a lot of people who actually do think that, but the way you described it, but that's, to me, not necessarily the right way to think about it. And if one creates great products, great services, then maybe you'll be able to build it into that kind of a size. But the feeling of success does not come from numbers of how many dollars the company is worth. The success comes from how many people am I helping to make things better for? And let's take a look at some of the great businesses. Look, I have an Apple phone. I like Apple. I like a lot of their products, really good stuff. Do I care how many trillions it's worth? No, not at all. What I care about is the product and the service. I use Google a lot. Do I care how much it's worth? Not at all. I care that it gets my information right away. That's what people should be concentrating on. Now, of course, there's a lot of details about, well, if you want to have a big company, you want to be big, you got to be international maybe. Depends on where you're starting from, what country you're starting from or not, and all sorts of details like that. But the big picture thing, again, is people really shouldn't be thinking about, I want to build a big company. People should think, I want to make a big product or a big service, something great.
Yeah. Obviously, like, no matter how much service you give, you can be like the number one service people in badminton supplies. And there's natural limitations because of the space you're in, right?
Yeah. Totally. And I just read that. I was trying to think which book I just read where the person was saying about and I forget exactly, there's an oil for some musical instrument. And you could be the number one doing that, but it's a relatively small TAM. So it can be that big. But hey, maybe the person loves music. Maybe they love that instrument. They're creating a better instrument. Maybe that's what will give you pleasure. But again, the issue is if somebody says, well, I only want to go into a business that is going to give me an opportunity to make something really transformative for the world, Okay, I get it. You got to pick a big market, a big thing. But again, the idea though is not the fact that it's to make the money or to create the great value in terms of dollars. It's because you want to affect a lot of people. That's, yeah, it's slightly different. There's a nuance that's different.
No, I like, again, over 900 and something episodes here. I'm a real audiobook nerd. I listen to maybe 2 to 4 books a week. So call it maybe 1,000 books on, a little over 1,000 books, philosophy, business, marketing stuff. Like, there's definitely this mentality of like the entrepreneurs who are like, well, what do I have to do to get the money? Like, what am I going to have to do to get the money? And then there's the ones where like, oh, money is a natural byproduct of superior service and quality. And it's, like, they're two sides to the coin, but which one you have flipped up does make a difference, right?
No, I absolutely think so. And when you think about some of the great entrepreneurs of the world, I wonder how many of them went into it burning, I want to do it to make money, or I want to do it to, be able to say that I have this big company. I wonder, when you think about it, I mean, Steve Jobs, did he, what he started, he start because he wanted to, because he cared about the value of Apple? I don't know. You read the biographies, I never met the man, but I assume from what I read that he seemed more interested in the perfection of the product, seemed more important to him. So I'll side that way.
Yeah, I heard somebody say, don't chase money, chase excellence.
It's
Like,
not
money's a natural byproduct.
Yeah, I like that. I think that is an example where the money will follow excellence. I think
Yeah.
that's what happened to our company. Why are we the size we are? Why do so many people use our business? I believe they use it because it's better. They have a lot of choices. When you're going to go travel, there's not a lot of friction choosing somebody else besides Booking or Priceline or Kayak or any of those. There are lots of choices. You go to Google, it's like, it's pretty easy to see a lot of things. So why do people use ours, or why do they use our apps? I believe they do it because we are providing them with value. That's it. The choice friction is so low that if we weren't doing that, they would choose somebody else.
Yeah. Well, and I want to talk about that. When you think about a market that has a lot of competition, how do you think about innovation? How do you think about having something special?
Yeah, it's hard, right? Especially when you're the distributor. You don't actually own the product itself. So I can't help make the lobby of the hotel better by having more flowers or having the people who are, taking the bags up to the room nicer. I have no control over any of that. On a flight, I can't do anything about making sure it goes on time. I can't do anything about this. What can I do? What I can do is make it easier for people to make the right choice and get the best price and get the value out of it. And if anything goes wrong, help them if something goes wrong, mechanical problem, who knows what. Those are things that we can control ourselves. And we do that. And that's something we can control. And it's interesting because if you go way back, so at the beginning of the company, people in the travel industry, the suppliers, the hotels, the airlines, car rentals, etc., they didn't have websites. They didn't know how to do websites. So we had an advantage there. People come to us. But then there are other websites too. Our job, make it better, make it easier to use it, have better payments, all sorts of things that are better. And then though you have the suppliers catch up and they do that, but then things change and now there's mobile. So now you have the mobile app. So again, be ahead, get the apps out first, get them better apps, etc. But people catch up. So now you have to come up with something better too. So now it's AI. So us having to use AI better than everybody else in terms of machine learning to be able to predict things better and all sorts of things there. Again, people start catching up, but harder, because that takes a lot more work, a lot more effort. And then you get into generative AI. And now we're right in the area of, is this going to be an equalizer where you end up in more of commoditization where everybody gets to play evenly? Or is this one where people are able to use generative AI much better and therefore they have a competitive advantage? And we obviously are spending a lot of time, energy, and effort trying to make sure that we're the ones who use generative AI so we produce better services, better value, and are able to lower our own costs, which then enables us to pass those savings on to the consumer. So that's the nature of capitalism. That's why capitalism is such a great way to run an economy, is the competition continually produces better services. That Adam Smith in 1776, which is interesting year. Get Declaration of Independence, get Adam Smith's book, and it comes out that invisible hand really shaping how things are developed. It works. It really does. And we have better things because of it.
Yeah. I'm interested in that AI conversation. What's an example? What's an example of something that's interesting to you there?
Well, I mean, there are a couple ways. So we just started this AI, very broad term. So when you go onto our sites and pretty much anybody's sites, and what you are shown, that's AI coming from machine learning models from what we know to decide what you would want to see in that search result. It's us and everybody else does it. That's what's happening. That's an interesting thing. Much more interesting, though, is what we want to do down the road. And that is, for example, so for now, when you get that search result and you click on a particular property, a hotel, let's say, the content is static. We have that content there. Not going to change. If you click on it or I click on it, it's the exact same. But imagine generative AI that the content we produce there for the description of that particular property is really tailored to you. And here's the example. Instead of you, let's do me, because I know me. I don't know you, Jess, so I'll use me. I like gyms. My wife, when we go to England, to London, she, doesn't mind going to afternoon tea. Now, what I want, when I do the searches, I want a hotel. When the content comes up, we're choosing the hotels that have really good gyms, really good afternoon tea, and it's showing that information right up front. So I have to go search the whole thing to see, does it have a good gym? Does it have afternoon tea? Is it good? Is what the reviews on it? I want that all there. Now I don't know you, but let's say you don't care about gyms or afternoon tea. Let's say you care about great bars at the roof. Well, then that content should be popping up that stuff for you. That's one of many, many use cases that I believe will create a better experience, making it easier for people to choose and select what they want. And the really great thing about that is that because, again, going back to the idea of competition, everybody's trying to improve their service and everything. We're all going to be better off because of this.
You think about the cost-effective way for mass personalization. I mean, what a great business case. I think about so my flight picker of choice for maybe, well over a dozen years has been kayak.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
For whatever reason, it's the one that the user experience was I just found it the most efficient, and it was giving me what I was looking for. And I just stopped looking at the other ones because it's right. I always knew I was going to get what I was looking for. And I just was absolutely the kayak guy. Right. And so any ways that you could make that even more if you knew my travel patterns, if you knew my this or that, if you knew, if there's ways to think that through, knowing I hate the rental car suggestions for those places that are dingy. You think, are these cars stolen? It's off the airport. It's this, you know what I mean? You're pretty sure there's a scam somewhere here because no building that looks like this could be completely above board. I would prefer to not even be served those in the first place, because then you go through this whole thing and then you realize oh, that's the bait and switch ones where they advertise this low price, but they're really doing this to you.
Yeah,
I'm fine to pay a little more to not wait in I've been in 2-hour lines at LAX when I kind of got pool sharked by a cheap price. And then I realized where is this place? Right. Yeah. The bus takes me to another bus that takes me to the place. And it was well over an hour and 45 minutes to get the car. I'm people.
No, it is.
Just don't show me that.
Exactly. And by the way, it goes on as simple as, again, this is how improvements happen over years and years and years. You go way back 20 years, you would have been shown, let's say you live, in Chicago, and you're looking to take a trip, let's say you're going to Florida, and you would like a cheap package deal, right? Well, back then, you may be shown a great package deal, but actually it leaves from Milwaukee, which is not any, you're not going to drive from Chicago to Milwaukee probably to get the packaging. And you would think, why is it showing me things I have to start in Milwaukee? Well, of course, that got cured, fairly well. But there's still, you take it all the way to now, you're still shown things that you're I would never buy that. Why is that being shown? I have that even, believe me, I see it all the time and stuff. that's something that you really want to solve. And that is using machine learning, using all the data we have about somebody, about their history, what they've done in the past, and using other cohorts, et cetera. And that creates a much better experience for you. Like for myself, I never want to see anymore a hotel with 2 stars, ever. No, I'm not staying there, ever. I was young. I once stayed at those type of hotels because I didn't have any money. Fine, back then. I stayed at hostels back then. I'm now, older. I have a good job. I don't want to stay in those hotels. Don't show them to me. That's the type of thing where you really can produce a much better experience. And that's, obviously a plain simple thing. But the sophistication I talked to you about with the generative AI, I think we're going to take you to a next level.
Yeah. I want to switch gears. I want to talk about invading a market where it feels like someone else is the dominant player. So, you look at short-term rental, alternative housing. You guys are so well known in Europe, right? But it's like now more and more I'm seeing you here. Like for instance, so we do these parties where I invite a bunch of high-profile people off the podcast to meet each other, right? So I got a sponsor. We're doing one of these this Saturday night during the Sundance Film Festival. Okay,
Nice.
and there's this guy on the show. He's got grew his company to $1 billion, doing like 100% growth per year. I invited him to fly out for the party because we got these billionaires and movie stars and pro athletes, and he thought it'd be fun. And
I guess
he's
my
like,
invitation was lost in the mail.
listen, it's Thursday. You still got 48 hours, and I've got the spot for you and your wife. I'm so serious. So let's talk after this is. Let's talk once the recording's over.
I think I have a board meeting, but okay.
Shoot. Okay, but Park City is slammed. I mean, the circus starts today for the Sundance Film Festival.
Yep, sure.
And rather than, one of the other folks who maybe are in a lot more customer minds in America for short-term rental and alternative housing, he booked this great penthouse on Main Street in Park City off booking.com for like $10,000. And we're doing 2 extra parties. So I got a party tonight and a party tomorrow night in advance of the party that we were already doing. And he could not be happier. We were talking about you today when I said, hey, guess who's coming on the show? He's like, we got this through booking. And
great.
Just before this started, he's like texting me. He's like, wow, this place is great. This is actually better than the pictures. And
that's great. So he's happy with it. Good choice. Mm-hmm. Good, great. I'm really happy for that. That's good. Now, it's this is a great business. It's something that we've been doing for a very long time. People in the U.S. don't know us for what we call alternative accommodations, not a hotel. Obviously, we have some competitors that are much better known in the States for this. So, I know where you're going in terms of how do we become as well known in the States as we are in other parts of the world, and offering a product that we believe is as good, and we believe that the things we're working on eventually be better.
Well, and not even just well known, but desired, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of companies that we all know the name of, but we're not, my friends are not out buying Buicks. No, every one of them knows what a Buick is. The awareness is not the problem, right? Okay, so the place where the party is across the street on Main Street, it's this super nice building, and the top floor is an apartment. So that friend told me hey, he just bought the building. He's like, that would normally rent for $7,000 during Sundance. When you think about attracting him to for next season, for him to put that on booking.com, how do you win him over to go, you know what, you might, there might be some other ones that that your friends would recommend, but do you know why you might prefer to go with Booking?
Yeah, so it comes down, obviously it's always an individual choice by an owner of a property. Where are they going to list? Why are they going to list? Do they usually stay with one distributor, or do they like to use multiple or not? And it'll depend on what demand is at the time or not. So obviously you get the example you're giving when during the Sundance Film Festival, demand is off the chart. There's not enough supply. In fact, people like that may not even want to list anybody because they can very easily fill that probably without having to pay anybody anything to get that filled, right? So there's always going to be that issue where you have high demand. It's really for us is more, don't worry so much about that unique, edge case. Talk about more in general.
Yeah, the rest of the year.
Right. How do we get him to put it on for the rest of the year when there's less demand and such? And that is, are we providing a good service to him? And it comes down to, are we providing him with quality customers? Are we doing the initial type of safety thing so that he feels comfortable that the people who are coming are going to be, good customers, let's call it. And are we paying him well? Are we getting the money to him quickly when it should be there, et cetera? Do we have the right insurance for him so he's not liable? Are we doing all the things that when you own a property and you're thinking of renting it out to a third party, a stranger that you do not know, you have a lot of concern, a lot of issues. So we got to provide that trust. He has to trust us that we're going to do the right things. So he, at the end of the day, when that party leaves his property, that he is happy and satisfied. And all the issues you have to deal with that. And that's not easy, by the way. It's complicated business. If it was an easy business, you'd see a lot more people in the business. You don't see a lot because it's complicated. And by the way, this is something that we can go into if you'd like about. It's a very interesting issue because it's not just the issue between the owner of the property and the person who's coming to visit and use the property. There's also other stakeholders that you have to consider. And that's the community. And then you think about tax situations. So there's government. So there are other elements that you want to think about when you're doing a business like that. How can you do this in the right way so that you are understanding the needs and desires of all the stakeholders and creating the right balance? And that's not easy. And there's been a lot of complications in a lot of parts of the world about, is this short-term rental business a good thing for society? Is it a bad thing for society? Or could be either, depends on how it is done. And that's where we really want to be, is we want to do this the right way so that we are taking into account there are some negative externalities and making sure we are addressing those.
Yeah. When you think about your competitors in that space who have that same list, how do you think about gaining an edge? How do you think about increasing your desirability over the other options?
Yeah. And I've said this publicly about how our product, there's still places and areas where we can make it even better. And I've talked about this on earnings calls, et cetera. We're still working out to make it better. It really comes down to, again, though, coming up with ways. I don't want to give any away, so I don't want our competitors to start seeing those, have those come out before our new things. But I will say there are ways to improve upon it. And if you have actually rented a short-term rental property to stay, you say, gee, I wish X, Y, and Z. Or if you own a property and you have put it up for rent on a platform, and you said, gee, why don't they do this? There are lots of opportunities and ways to improve this product.
Yeah, that's great. I'm interested in your thoughts for the longer term vision of when you look at maybe you disagree with me, but when I look at what feels like long term increasing demand for an alternative place to stay, and especially some experiential alternative place to stay, where do you think that's coming from, or where do you see that going over the next number of years?
So again, there are a bunch of issues that play into that. And a lot of people wonder about that in terms of where we're talking about. And it's very different if we're talking about a resort area, let's say Park City, where you're talking about, which is developed for people to come and visit, okay? Versus, say, a place where people live full year round, Amsterdam, Venice, where there are problems. And you have to think about what's the right way to do that. I'll let you. You want to bring something?
Yeah. So, like my commercial real estate fund, we're looking right now at developing small resorts for action sports families. Within 20 minutes of a national park or a surfing beach or a snowboarding mountain or wake surfing lake, like that. Very much your first scenario.
Yeah. So you want to do that. It's great. And by the way, a lot of the big chains are developing these types of properties where it's not a hotel room. It's a place like an apartment, a condo, whatever. It has, the things that families want. They want a kitchen. They want a way for the kids to have breakfast in the room. They want to be able to do the laundry and all that, and a lot more space. But they also don't want to have to deal with keeping it clean. They would like to have some of the service of a hotel and sort of a hybrid type thing. That's a great thing. Now, that's, I think a lot of developers like you perhaps are thinking about developing things like that because there is a demand for that kind of a property. There's not that much of it around. That's great. And again, simple supply and demand. There's demand and you want to build the supply and put it in there. It's good. The issue more interesting, though, from my perspective, though, is what we see in other parts of the world that aren't specific to what you're talking about, where we see long-term residential properties that are being used for short-term space. And the question is that lowering the total amount of available long-term residential properties such that the prices for the people who that's their home, they live there, that the prices are going up for that, creating it harder for people to actually afford to live there, or just causing all the hassles of a lot more tourists, like you will see in places like Florence, Venice, Amsterdam. And by the way, you may be familiar, in New York, very recently, a very, very strict law came into effect that really is restricting the short-term rental industry.
North Shore of Oahu as well, in Hawaii.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I got to tell you, we actually see it as one of the biggest risks. So we're intentionally pursuing things where we can either get resort zoning or hotel zoning, even though we're going after more of the short-term rental feel.
Yeah.
Because all it takes is a county vote, and your business is over.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. That goes into the whole issue of when you want to do a business, whatever the business is making sure you think about things like community, government, other issues. And those are things you really want to make sure before you start investing into that, whatever the idea is, that you really take into account. Because as you say, you can have a great business and all of a sudden tomorrow it's gone because the county's, legislators decide to outlaw your business.
Yeah. Shifting gears again, there's so many CEOs that take over a company that was previously a rocket ship, and they're, they have a slight growth model. There are much fewer that after that type of rocket ship growth, then double a company again or more. What do you think is different about you? What do you think is different compared to maybe other professional CEOs that maybe almost see themselves as, maintainers, and they're really shooting for that 3% or 8% growth this year, or total over years?
Yeah, well, again, it goes into the law of large numbers and how big is the company, and nothing grows to the to the moon. So again, I wouldn't necessarily say that. Well, that first CEO did a great job building it, incredible, and also you get the second CEO and it's just regular growth, whatever. I think the important thing is it's still growing faster than its competitors. If it is, the person's doing a good job. Just when the base is much larger, it's hard to have that much higher percentage increase. And those are the things you start looking at. Look, we've been very, very fortunate that we have continued to build a business that continues to outperform what the market for travel is. We continue to exceed what the growth rate of the overall travel industry is. And we continue to do that by creating better services, better products, grabbing share from our competitors. So that's really what I'm looking at to do. I know we are, quote unquote, winning if we're able to convince more people to come and use our service than other services. I can't control the overall demand for travel. That's beyond my control, really. And the fact is, we're so big now that essentially in the long run, we'll have cycles, of course, but in the long run, my goal is just let's continue over, let's say, a 10-year cycle. Let's make sure that we outperform what the travel industry is, which is a nice growth rate because it's a little bit bigger than what global GDP growth is going to be over a long cycle. So if we do a little better than that, that'll be good. I think our investors will be happy, and I'll be happy because we'll have done something that is competitively good. We've created better services. That's what I'm aiming. But I think it's hard. Sometimes people criticize the new CEO because they didn't do what the first CEO did. But a lot of times that's not possible. The company is different. And by the way, our company is different too, just for example. So we started out Booking.com, for example, which really is the biggest part of this overall organization by far. Yes, we have Priceline, Kayak, Open Table, and we got other companies that a lot of Americans would know, like Agoda. But the big player is Booking.com. And Booking.com, for a very long time, all they did was hotels. Just hotels. Good business. But now we do other things too. We do flights. We do attractions. We do rental cars, all that stuff. Those are different businesses with different growth profiles and different profit margins, et cetera. So you're comparing apples and oranges.
Sure. Well, I have a question about that. What advice would you have for entrepreneurs and CEOs when it comes to the decision tree of like, should we keep going on just hotels, or is it time to add those ancillary services? How do you think about that decision tree?
Yeah. So one thing is, what are your resources? What are your capabilities? And what are you expecting to get out of that, moving away from what you're doing right now? Why are you doing this? If you're doing just because growth has slowed and therefore we'll do something else with the money that we're earning from our primary business, that may not be the best thing to do, because you could give that money to the owners and they can invest that money themselves in another business. So there's no real reason to do it except the fact that you as management are going to have a bigger P&L and maybe you'll make more money or something like that. That's not a good reason to do it. A good reason to do it is because you believe that having these other services, products, is actually going to create a better experience for your customers. Or on our side, we have a two-sided marketplace, our suppliers. And travel is a good example of this, where I really believe that by having more than just hotels, we really were providing a service to our traveling customers that would enable them to do it more efficiently and more economically. And we'd be able to come up with different ways that we could do travel that would make life better for them. In addition, provide more opportunities for our suppliers to provide discounts or whatever they want to get more customers when they need it by bundling together these different products, et cetera. So we really, I think, believe that by connecting this all together, it would provide a better thing. And we call that the connected trip, which is really where we're going to. And the ultimate thing I talk about a lot, and Gen AI accelerating what I've talked about long before Gen AI became the thing, is I want to use technology to recreate the wonderful experience that I would have decades ago with a human travel agent. The human travel agent knew everything about me or my family, because, I wasn't really the buyer when I was a kid, but my parents. And the travel agent knew us, and they knew what my parents could afford, knew what we liked. And she would go through the brochures, and she'd come up and she'd offer a couple things, and we discuss it back and forth. And then he's like, okay, we'll go on that. And you give her one check, and then you went. And if anything went wrong, you called her and she fixed it. Miracle, right? That's what, but technologies do it much better than that human did, because technology, the database knows a lot more than she did with her brochures and her books and stuff like that. And the sensors to know what's happening out in the market right now to be able to come up with better value to you. And obviously, technologies know much more about us than she did, and be able to use that information in a much better way. And even more so, she would know something went wrong when we called her and said something went wrong. Technology should know that there's something going wrong before the traveler even knows it's going wrong. I want technology to know that flight is not taking off on time before I know that, and make the changes, suggest changes to me before I'm even aware. And then does everything along with that, because now that the flight is delayed, it will contact, I was going to have dinner early evening, but now I'm not going to arrive in the afternoon, I'll arrive afterwards. So it changes the reservation and all that on the restaurant stuff. And by the way, it's so delayed, I'm not going to get there till after midnight. Well, I don't want to lose my hotel reservation. So it is reaching out to the hotel saying, Mr. Fogel's going to be late because the flight, blah, blah, blah. Those are all the things that can be done with technology, but it's not done yet. It's complicated. It's going to take time. But that's what I envision, and that's what the connected trip is really all about. It's making it easier for everybody to experience the world, and that's what our mission is.
I love that example so much. I think about all these, great entrepreneurs I get to interview, and there's a principle that this is what I call it, and I'd love to hear if you see it differently, but it seems like customers are so willing to pay for somebody who can remove friction. And as you're talking there, I'm just thinking all the annoyance, the waiting, the unknowing, you think about how many points of friction you just talked about reducing. And if there's any way that I could afford your connected trip, and you've got that before others do, I mean, what a gimme. That's incredible.
Yeah, no, it is. And that's part of the thing is, people don't like friction. And go to any airport and you can watch it in action. You can see it happening, and you can see the frustration on people. Nobody likes that. I mean, do you ever wonder, why when you're going through security, sometimes it takes 50 minutes, an hour? How can that be? I will pay you. What do you want? $25? I'll pay 25. Well, we have Clear, which is helpful. I like Clear. It's helpful, but I want even better. I want everybody to be able to get that in every airport. And then you go international and you end up, and finally you landed after a 6 or 7 hour flight and you're going through, and there's a line through immigration to check your passport that goes out, you can't even see where it ends. And you think, why is that? How hard is this? There's so many. Go to a hotel. So you go to the hotel. You ever notice there's this long line to check in? You finally get to the check-in thing, and the person starts typing behind the desk, and they keep on typing. And you're like wondering, what are they typing? All my information was in the reservation. What are they typing? What do they need? And they're not talking, not asking for it. They're just typing away. I have no idea what they're doing back there. Those are things why can't I arrive and my phone will tell me where my room is and my phone will open the door? Well, it turns out that there are a couple of hotels now that do that. Thank God. Thank God. I wish they were all. That's the type of things. Look, technology is fantastic. We just need to roll it out faster.
No kidding. So we got to become friction hunters. I like it.
Friction hunters. I like that too. Maybe a TV show, Friction Hunter.
But it is fascinating, right? Because as soon as it's done, we all go, oh, why didn't I think about that?
But yeah, even more so though, is like people think like, oh, of course, isn't that like how it always is? I mean, think about it. My kid, look, I grew up, my parents were amazed there's TV because they grew up, there was no TV. This is amazing. I'm like, I look, well, all the things on my phone, it's incredible. My kids are like, well, it's obvious, of course, right? The novelty wears off extremely quickly, and you go on to the next friction or point of annoyance that you want solved. But that's okay.
Yeah. You've brought up something multiple times, this idea of a superior customer experience, superior customer service. There's so many people that would define that differently. How do you define it?
Well, I think the important thing is, what does the customer value? Not what I think is good. It's what do they think is good. Because they're the ones who are going to make the decision whether or not to stay with us or go with somebody else. So again, you had to think, though, I only have so much in terms of resources. I can only devote it to so many things. So what we'll do is, we're not going to go out for the edge case. We're going one that's going to solve the problem that is most, complained about, used, the thing that bothers people the most. That's where you're going to spend your resource first. Solve that one first, which is so important. Prioritize. So for entrepreneurs, creating businesses, et cetera, is sometimes they start loving parts of it that it turns them on. They love it. But if the majority of their customers are not what they want, you got a mismatch that's going to end up very badly. So it's really important to prioritize for what the customer wants, or the majority of the customers, the most customers want, not what you want. And that's something sometimes people miss out on. It can cause real grief with a whole bunch of investors.
Well, I want to talk about this concept. I've heard you talk before about, I remember your list of books about mergers gone wrong, right?
Oh, yeah.
And how often you feel like that's an ego thing. And I think, my time in M&A at Citi and watching that market since, I see that, and I read the KPMG reports about loss of shareholder value by an acquirer, things like this. And this idea that you just brought up of like, it's not what the business isn't here to serve me, right? The business is here to serve the customer. So who cares what I think it should be?
Right.
It's what does the customer think? And so this idea of, somebody who's got the top job where they're, maybe they own the whole company. There is no board of directors and they need to humble themselves. They need to check themselves. Any thoughts for exercises? Any thoughts for reminders to help not get so excited about our own ideas? We're not actually listening to what customers are really saying. Like, we're listening for confirming evidence instead of really listening.
Yeah, I mean, the incredible heuristic bias in that one, always like picking out the evidence that proves what you already believed. Watch out for that all the time. Look, one of the best ways to do it is be asking other people. And that's, making sure to depend on other people's opinion too, particularly people, diversified groups of people, not that are solely who you are and what your thinking is, to be able to get that other opinion. I absolutely depend on people in our company and outside the company for things to get their thoughts on things, to make sure I'm getting a balanced view and trying to come up with it. And obviously, data is really nice. The old saying, everybody repeats it all the time, that in God we trust. Everybody else has to bring data. It's an old saying, but it's true. It really is amazing though how people do make some serious errors because they just didn't ask other people's opinion. But again, there's a lot of art, stories, plays. Go back to the ancient Greeks about pride. We it's, it's it's a universal theme about pride, and then disaster comes. So I try. Humble is a good way to go. By the way, there are a bunch of books. You mentioned a book about M&A going wrong. There's so many books about that, but my favorite because the title is Deals from Hell. It's actually a book, Deals from Hell. And it shows a whole bunch of deals that just, you wonder how could anybody thought that was going to work.
Yeah. Wild. Listen, this has been so fun for me. Thank you for making the time for this. What do you want to leave people with today?
Well, first, thank you, Jess. I mean, I enjoyed this a great deal, too. I think the end of the thing to really leave people with is, at the end of the day, is business and our markets, capitalism, the way our society works, has really created just such incredible advancements for our society. We are where we are in the good things because of that competition. I believe in that. And I believe that helps make people want to do their jobs better, create better services, better products, and that's what everybody focuses on. In the end, we're all going to be better off. And we'll just sit here at Booking Holdings and all our companies, Booking.com, Priceline, Kayak, Open Table, we'll just keep on trying to do that the best we can, and I hope we continue to do it for a long time.
Well, maybe as our final thing, I'll get you to share a quote that I really like and I know you really love from Mark Twain.
Oh, sure. Because I was talking about how I believe that travel is a force of good. And this is the thing, is that Mark Twain was a journalist before he wrote Huckleberry Finn or The Adventures of Tom Sawyer or any of those books. He was a journalist. He was based in California. And the newspaper there paid for him to go to the Middle East. He went to the Middle East, and this is the 1800s, more than 100 years ago. He goes there, and he comes back, and he writes a book. And in the book, he's talking about his trip. And he says that travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness. That was true then, and it's true now. And I believe if more people would travel, and when I say travel, I mean go beyond your bubble, explore the world, I believe that will make us all much better people.
I haven't traveled nearly as much as you, but there's certainly been those things for me. I remember going to China a couple of times, and there were things I expected, and then there's all these things I didn't expect. I got to go to Nigeria, and you hear about all the kidnappings and all the hard things, and I was expecting more like, Germans or Russians or people who maybe scowl at you a little bit more when they're walking around sometimes, right? And they were more like Polynesians. They were just the most welcoming people and trying to have you at their house, and just so fascinating and so different than the headlines I'd been fed for years.
Yeah.
And in my small way, I feel like I've experienced that.
Yeah, it really is. I think it's even more important than ever, because so many people are in information silos, and they're getting only one type of information of only one kind that's reinforcing a viewpoint that they may have started with, the way the algorithms work. And by going out and actually seeing something with your own eye may help break that silo thinking and be able to have a much broader view of the world.
Yeah, I love it. Well, thanks again for doing this.
Well, thank you, Jess. Thank you very much. Enjoy the party. Enjoy the things and beautiful skiing with all the snow going your way. So please enjoy, and I hope to talk to you again.
You bet. Bye, everyone.